everyone. Welcome to another award-winning edition of the Locker Room Chat. My name is John Williams, and we are live here at the BBB TV 12 studios here in beautiful Oak Ridge in the historic Grove Center. And we have a very special guest with us here tonight. Our guest tonight is the head football coach of the Oak Ridge Wildcats, Joe Gaddis. Joe, thank you for being here and welcome to the chat.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome, and we're doing a little social distancing here tonight, and especially in light of what's going on. So I probably should have been doing that all along, but Joe's setting the example for his team, and it's very recommendable what you're doing.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I've been telling them to stay 6 feet or more away from everybody as much as possible, and not to be that close for more than 10 minutes. So I thought I'd do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And last week we had on the voice of the Wildcats, David Clary. Does a great job with Oak Ridge Athletics, and tonight, as I mentioned, the head coach of the Wildcats, Joe Gaddis, and I also might add Hall of Fame coach Joe Gaddis. And that's quite an honor, and 320 wins overall, headed into your 38th season as a head coach. And it's quite an honor. You're elected to or inducted into the Tennessee Football Coaches Hall of Fame in 2018, and that's quite an honor.
Thanks, appreciate it. A lot of great players, a lot of great coaches went into that. Certainly not just me, but I do appreciate that.
Right. I know you don't like to really talk about yourself, but that's a great honor, and you're not only inducted into the Hall of Fame, but usually that happens to coaches when they retire. I mean, if they're lucky enough to be inducted, but you're put in the Hall of Fame while you're still coaching, so I think you're doubly honored there.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. So I know you don't really like to talk about yourself, but we'll talk about get into that a little bit more later on in the show. Get you to talk about some of your accomplishments and things that's happened to you in your coaching career. But wow, it's just 2 weeks away, a little over 2 weeks away, Coach Gaddis, and before the first game, y'all kick it off against the Hardin Valley Hawks over at Hardin Valley, August 21st. It is a Friday night game, right?
Yes, it is.
So 2 weeks away, a little over, and does that surprise you? Did it catch you off guard after Governor Lee, he lifted the non-contact ban just last week?
Yeah, I don't get shocked very often. In fact, I remember telling the team the day before that happened that we had, I think we had something like 45 or 46 days before the first game, and something like, 35 or 40 practices, and all of a sudden we were down to, 3 weeks and 3.5 weeks and about 17 practices. So yeah, that definitely caught me off guard because our numbers in Tennessee were still going up a little bit. Thank goodness now I think they're leveling off, and then maybe the last couple of days have even gone down a little. But that was a shocker, and it was a pleasant shock, but it was a shock. And now all of a sudden I told the guys today at the end of practice, we only have 10 more practices in pads, and we play. And just 2 weeks ago, we thought we would have, more like 35 practices in pads left. So it was a stunner for sure.
Right, that's how it's hitting me right now. It's just hard to believe 2 weeks away from the start of the season. I'm pretty sure you're not the only head coach or team has been caught off guard. But there's David Clary last week we talked about. He said he received a text from you just said, wow, just wow, So hopefully things will work out to where we can play football. Here just last night, news broke that Greenville in Powell, who was supposed to play in week 1. Greenville had to cancel their game because they had an outbreak of the COVID-19 on their team. So that game's been postponed, and you just don't want to see that happen to any team, but that reality is out there, and just hopefully the season we can get through this and hopefully finish the season.
I certainly hope so. And yeah, you're right about Greenville. Unfortunately, I don't know when they'll get back to playing, but of course that cost Powell, as you said, it cost them their first game. And I actually spoke with Matt Lowe last night because a friend of mine from Middle Tennessee contacted me to see if I could give him Matt's number to see if they could work out a game. So I guess a lot of teams, probably across the state, because I think Memphis is going to start late, are going to be looking for some games.
Exactly, and let's go back to mid-March when spring sports pretty much were canceled. The school was halted. I think around the 1st of April was when they ended up canceling the spring sports. But from that time to the 1st of June, you had no contact with your team at all. I don't believe. I mean, you could talk to them, I guess, on the phone or text, but you couldn't really be around any of your team. And just how did that go for the Wildcats when y'all finally reported? That was around the 1st of June, right?
Yes, it was a strange time for sure. I've never spent so much time at home. I'd go out to the store here and there, but it was different from anything I've ever experienced in my life, and didn't like being away from the players, coaches, and so forth. We had worked out in January and February, and seems like maybe a week and a half or so in March. We had spring break, and we never came back from spring break. We were gone, as you know, the rest of March, all of April, all of May, and then the first week of June we were allowed to go back and resume football practice, but under some pretty strict guidelines for the rest of June, just like everybody else. So everybody missed spring practice. Nobody has an advantage, but it was definitely a strange time. And I will say this, and I'm sure I'm not the only coach that will say this, when we came back, our players had a great attitude, probably the best attitude I've ever seen players have, because they were just so eager to get back and do anything, get out of the house. They missed football. They missed their teammates, and it was June was really a great month.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, you went into the dead period, which is ended around a little bit into July 6th, I believe. But on July the 1st, word came down from the governor. He extended the state emergency order through August 29th. So, pretty much everything was put on hold there. You still was able to practice what you had been doing, conditioning and whatnot, but you weren't able to have 7-on-7 football. And then when was you were supposed to start in pads? Was that like July, the end of July?
Yeah, if we had been on a regular schedule, it would have been July 27th. As it turned out, with Governor Lee signing the recent order, it turned out to be August 3rd. Actually, we were a day behind in our acclimation, so our first day in pads was August 4th, and I'm sure that caught a lot of people off guard a little bit, so we probably weren't the only ones behind a day or two. Normally, as you know, we have 4 weeks of practice in full pads before our first game, but now it's 3.
Right, so if you look at it that way, it's not too bad, but you missed that 7-on-7, you missed that, so that's really key there. But it's nothing like putting on the pads and playing football. So
no, a big difference. We had 7-on-7 scheduled for July 9th and July 10th, I believe, a Thursday and a Friday, against several teams both days. We didn't get to do that. We were not allowed to do it, and then we had a 3-way scrimmage schedule with Bearden and William Blunt on July 31st, and a scrimmage with Maryville scheduled actually for this coming Friday, the 7th. And, you can't scrimmage anybody either. So, again, everybody's going to be on the same level playing field, no 7-on-7, no scrimmages. And it'll be interesting to see how everybody plays that first week of the season.
Right, everybody be going in blind, I believe, pretty much. I had a coach tell me today.
Somewhat, yes.
Uh-huh. We got a call here. Let's go to the phone lines. They're open with your calls for Coach Gaddis. Go ahead, caller. You're on the locker room chat.
like to ask Geddes, when's the next time they're going to play Anderson County High School?
You'd like to know when you're going to be able to schedule Anderson County High School?
Oh, that's the question?
Yeah, I think that's the question.
Well, we had something worked out with Anderson County.
Yes.
I'm going to say maybe 2 or 4 years ago. At the last minute, they opted to play Jefferson County instead of us. So that's more a question for them instead of us.
Right, Anderson County is supposed to have a pretty strong team this year. So I know y'all last played them, I believe it was 2016. They had a strong sophomore class at that time, and you know, I think that's a rivalry. You know, a county foe inside. I think it should be played. Hopefully, when reclassification comes up, I believe they're supposed to do it next week. Maybe it's coming up. Maybe where y'all can get the Mavericks back on the schedule. They might even be in the region. Who knows?
It could be.
Any other questions or comments, caller? Already hung up? Okay, right now we're going to take our first break, and our guest tonight is Oak Ridge head football coach Joe Gaddis. Be sure and call in here. The phone lines are open, and we'll be back here shortly to visit some more with Joe Gaddis. You're watching the Locker Room Chat.
Roan Metals Group has been serving East Tennessee for decades. Locally owned and operated with convenient hours of operation. Roan Metals buys all types of scrap metal. Nothing's too big or too small. Still have that clunker sitting around? We've been buying them for years. Roan Metals Group are specialists in industrial scrap. We have what it takes to get any size job done. Roan Metals urges you to recycle responsibly. Scrap with only licensed dealers. A member of the TSRA and the ISRI. Roan Metals Group. Turn that scrap into cash.
Muncie Pharmacy is your locally owned hometown pharmacy. They accept most insurances, so why go to the large chain pharmacies when you get better customer service at Muncie Pharmacy? Have a special prescription that needs compounding? Muncie Pharmacy can handle those needs as well. Muncie Pharmacy has a drive-thru for your convenience and offers free delivery in the Oak Ridge area. And don't forget the gifts that we have available for all occasions.
Here at Muncie Pharmacy, we take the time to know you and treat you like family.
At OEB, we know lives have changed. Parents have become teachers, and our homes are now our offices. The roads may seem empty, but people are still driving and still working. And when they get injured because someone else was careless, they know they can still depend on us. We are OEB Law, and the one thing that hasn't changed is our commitment to helping people right here at home. We're just a phone call away. 865-546-1111. OEB Law. Tennessee Barnes & Buildings in Jacksboro has all your storage building needs. At Tennessee Barnes & Buildings, you can pick out your building, then custom design it how you want it, and then have it delivered. Our friendly staff will help you with all your design needs. Are you worried about financing? Well, at Tennessee Barnes & Buildings, there's no credit check, so no one is turned down. Plus, you can rent to own your own building. Tennessee Barnes & Buildings in Jacksboro says come on down for your next building. Or call 423-449-8139.
At Earl F. Subaru, providing exceptional customer service is what we do best, and we've got the awards to prove it.
We've been recognized as Tennessee's only 9-time winner of the Love Promise Customer Commitment Award. And again this year, we also earned the Love Promise Community Commitment Award given for enhancing the areas we serve. At Earl F. Subaru, we're more than just a car lot. We're a retailer you can love and one that gives back to local causes. Check out our reviews and come to Earl F. Subaru in Harriman.
All Outback, Forester, Ascent, Legacy, and Impreza models have available 0% financing during the Subaru A Lot to Love event at Earl Duff Subaru.
Live and Let Live Drugstore in downtown Rockwood is your gift destination. Shop the new plush selection for that special someone. We have Bath & Body Works popular fragrances and custom gift baskets too. Live and Let Live has a wide selection of gift and home decor for any occasion, from yard flags to selected jewelry, plus much more. We have Big Orange giftware always available year-round. And don't forget to enjoy a soda fountain treat while you shop. Live and Let Live Drugstore, Gift Shop, and Soda Fountain in downtown Rockwood.
Welcome back to the Locker Room Chat. Our guest tonight is Oak Ridge head football coach Joe Gaddis. And Joe, news came down today about University of Connecticut, or Connecticut University. They're now an independent football program, but they were canceling their season, so that was a lot of their games I was looking at had already been canceled because they were an independent school and they had some teams on there that are only playing conference schedules, like Indiana, Illinois, the Big Ten, Mississippi from the SEC, because most conferences are going to conference-only schedules and maybe playing maybe one non-conference game.
So UConn is not in a conference, is that what you're saying?
Right, UConn they're an independent
right.
this year. I didn't know that. I'm just reading that.
Yeah,
but,
I know more about, I guess, UConn women's basketball than I do UConn football. But, if they're not in a conference, that's going to make it tough. I noticed Notre Dame, for the first time ever, got in a conference, got in the ACC for this year so they could play football because they were going to be in the same boat, I assume. But you're right, most major college football teams are playing conference schedules only.
Mm-hmm. So, Coach Gaddis, let's get in and talk about you a little bit here. Let's talk about just growing up. Let's talk about your early childhood days, where you were born and where you grew up at.
I was born in New York City. Most people that know me well know I'm a huge Yankee fan. I'm a football coach, but my favorite team of all sports is the New York Yankees. My parents divorced when I was 2, and my dad lived in New York City, and I spent the summers, the custody agreement was, I spent the summers with my dad in New York City, and probably from the time I was about 4 or 5 years old, he would take me to 2 or 3 Yankee games a year, and that's back when Mickey Mantle and all them were playing, so it's in my blood. I love the Yankees, and my mom at the time lived in Georgia. We moved around. I lived in Georgia for a while, Alabama for a while, Tennessee for a while. And then after graduating high school, we moved to Florida. So, and my mom's still there now. So that's kind of how I grew up and where I grew up.
Mm-hmm. And Aaron Judge, you hit another home run today. You probably saw that before you came down.
Well, I recorded the game. They played a doubleheader with the Phillies today. I know they lost the first one, but I didn't know he hit another home run. But I just don't like the fact that we lost the game. But yeah, he's pretty hot.
Right. They about came back and won. They were down like 11-3, and they had the tying run at the plate at one time, I believe. But so you say your mom's lives in Florida?
Yeah, she lives in a small town in central Florida, Mount Dora, kind of halfway between Orlando and Daytona.
Mm-hmm.
She'll be 89 in August. Well, in this month, late August 31st.
Wow. I'd like to wish her an early 89th birthday.
Right.
And I remember it was last season, I was listening on the radio, and you was getting interviewed, and I think y'all were fixing to go on fall break. You had a week off, and you was actually going to Yankee Stadium, flying up that next day.
You know, I actually did that last year. I went to see them play Minnesota in the playoffs. Literally flew up to Yankee Stadium that day and got back early the next morning because we worked on Sunday in the playoffs. And then the next Saturday flew to Houston and watched that last game against the Astros that they unfortunately lost. But yeah, I'm a huge Yankee fan.
I guess you saw Mickey Mantle play and some of the Yankee greats back then.
Yeah, Mickey Mantle was my first hero for sure. Yeah, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Yogi Berra, all those guys. Elston Howard. I mean, I could keep naming them, but I know we don't want to talk about the Yankees.
Uh-huh. Now, where did you attend high school?
Jackson High School in Jackson, Tennessee. I lived in Huntsville, Alabama, the latter part of my elementary school years, and then most of junior high, and then we moved to Jackson, Tennessee when I was in the 9th grade, right kind of in the latter part of the 9th grade, and then I played high school football in Jackson, Tennessee, and went to high school at Jackson High School. Jackson High consolidated with Mary High School across the street, and it became Jackson Central Mary. So Jackson High School actually didn't exist anymore after I graduated. That was the last class of Jackson High, and then it became Jackson Central Mary, or JCM. Oak Ridge fans will remember because they played them. I believe it was in '79 in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. What year did you graduate high school?
1970.
1970.
Yes.
Okay. And did you play? You say you played football at Jackson High?
Yeah, I played football at Jackson High. We had a good football team every year I was there, and before and after. There's a good football program there.
Mm-hmm. What position did you play?
I was a tailback. We were just a traditional I formation team like everybody back then, and I played safety, return punts, return kickoffs.
Uh-huh. Now, you went on to college, correct?
Yes.
Did you
I
play
didn't
football
play
in college?
football in college. No, I graduated high school. I was about 5'9", 150, 155 pounds. There wasn't a lot of call for a guy my size in college football, but I went to the University of Central Florida in Orlando. Like I said, we moved to Orlando, Florida, literally the day after I graduated high school.
Now, where'd you go to college at?
University of Central Florida in Orlando.
Okay. Uh-huh. They've really came on here of late, too. A good football program here in the last decade. Really. Yeah,
it's grown. I don't even recognize it now. It was a smaller school way back then, but it's a big school with a good football program now. They didn't have football when I was there.
Mm-hmm. I was reading up a little bit. I saw an article about you going back to your high school days, and your head coach was Dan Bland. Is that correct?
Actually, my head coach was Richard Ross, but Dan Bland was my position coach. He was also my head track coach, and he turned out to be and still is one of my lifelong best friends. We developed a unique relationship after I graduated high school, and he actually is probably the reason I'm coaching football. And he got me my first job in West Tennessee at Ripley High School in 1976, and then he hired me to be an assistant coach with him at Tullahoma High School the next year, and I coached with him at Tullahoma for 4 years. And then when he took the head job at Farragut in 1980, I went with him for 3 years, 80 through 82, and then before I became the head coach back in Tullahoma in 83. So he really, in addition to being a great friend, he's the reason probably that I'm coaching football, number one, and coaching in Tennessee, number two.
Right, Dan Bland. I saw where you recognized him during your induction speech, recognizing Dan Bland. Of course, you mentioned he was the head coach at Farragut, and there in the early 80s, I guess maybe late 70s, early 80s, I can recall him as the head coach, and I believe he coached Bill Bates. Might have been the year before you got there. Bill Bates, maybe a year or two. You came in after he left.
Yeah, Bill Bates, I think, played on a great Farragut team, maybe in 77, 78, right in there. Coach Bland, unfortunately, missed him. Coach Bland's first year was 1980, which was obviously a great year here in Oak Ridge. That was the second of consecutive state championships. I believe in 1980, Oak Ridge beat Germantown 13-0, but that was the year Coach Bland and I both went to Farragut.
Mm-hmm. So your first head coaching position was at Ripley?
Tullahoma.
Or Tullahoma, first
right.
Head coach. And
yes.
What year was that?
1983.
1983, and you was an assistant at Ripley.
Yes.
Uh-huh. So, yeah, Dan Bland, he was at the Tullahoma roots and as well, and I remember he brought a team to Clinton. I think it was Clinton's first playoff team, 1981, the fall of 81. Farragut came in and played Clinton. It was a packed house, and Dan Bland was the coach. I guess you was on the staff then.
I was. 1981 was a good year at Farragut. We lost in the semifinals to Ray County that year, but had a good football team.
Mm-hmm. I actually went down to that game. I recall my brother was a sports writer for the Knoxville Journal. At the time, I rode down with him, and I remember y'all playing Ray County, and came up a little short, I believe, but a really good Farragut team. Had a running back, Mike Stone, had a big, I think Mike Moeller as well, big fullback, just a huge guy.
Yeah, you've got a good memory.
Right, yeah, I was.
Now, who's your brother?
Steve Williams.
I know him.
Uh-huh.
I remember him well.
Yeah, he wrote a long time with the Knoxville Journal, and now writes for the Knoxville Focus.
Yes, he did. I didn't know y'all were brothers, but tell him I said hello. Maybe he'll remember me from back then.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he's watching right now, and maybe he'll call in. But the phone lines are open, as you can see there on the screen. Give us a call here, Our guest is Joe Gaddis, head football coach of the Oak Ridge Wildcats. And Joe, I know this is your 38th season coming in, your 46th year as a coach, 38th as a head coach, and you got 182 total wins at Oak Ridge. I think you're the winningest coach at Oak Ridge, and also I believe I think David Clary was telling me today you're the dean of coaches in the state of Tennessee.
I didn't know that, but maybe I am. I didn't know that.
But let's talk a little bit about some of your stops you've had. As I mentioned, I think you've coached at 7 schools, and you've also coached in 3 other states. Let's touch a little on some of those schools you coached at, high schools.
Yeah, well, I guess a little known fact is my very first year coaching, after I graduated from Central Florida in 1974, I coached at a junior high in Orlando. Trying my best to get to Tennessee, and Coach Bland, as I said earlier, helped me get a job in Ripley, Tennessee. But my first head coaching job, as I said earlier, was in Tullahoma, 1983 through 87, and then from there I went to Oak Ridge, or I came here to Oak Ridge, 88 through 98. When I left Oak Ridge, I went to Pascagoula, Mississippi. Unbelievable athletes. That's down on the coast. I've never seen such a collection of athletes as in the state of Mississippi. Went from Pascagoula, Mississippi to Decatur, Alabama, Austin High School. A friend of mine was the principal there, and another good place for athletes for sure. Was there 3 years. Went from there to Henry County High School in West Tennessee, in Paris.
How'd y'all do at Henry County?
Did well. First year we didn't do well, but after that we went to the playoffs there in 2005, I think it was, for the first time in several years. And then in 2006, 7, and 8, we went to the semifinals 3 years in a row. I think we were maybe something like 11-2, 12-1, 13-1, somewhere in there, or 12-2, 13-1. Had good teams there for sure. From there, I went to the superintendent that hired me in Henry County. He retired, went to North Carolina, and I followed him to Lexington, North Carolina for a couple of years, and then really found myself wanting to come back to Tennessee. The Trenton Peabody job opened up over in West Tennessee. I went there for 1 year and would have stayed there, liked it a lot, but Oak Ridge opened up, and it seemed like some people here wanted me back, so I came back to Oak Ridge in 2013.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was your second stint with the Wildcats. As you mentioned, you were there from 88 to 98 and won a state championship in 1991. And, of course, now you're back with the Wildcats since 2013, trying to get back to that state championship game. And just an outstanding career you've had. You talk about Peabody and Henry County. You know, Henry County's an outstanding program. I believe they won a state championship earlier in the previous decade. Defeated Powell, I believe, and they've been knocking on the door a few times. But Peabody, aren't they a private school, right?
No, it's a public school.
Okay. There is another Peabody in the private division, I believe, but I may be mistaken. But anyway, and you was in Decatur, Alabama, and I know you're an Alabama fan as well, correct?
That's true. When I was, people have given me a hard time about that, but, including some family members. But when I was really getting to love football, because I was a baseball guy when I was a little boy because of the Yankees, and I played Little League Baseball. But when I moved to Alabama, I lived in Alabama 1960 through 1967, and that's when I got introduced to football, really. And I went to Alabama games back at Old Legion Field in Birmingham, and Bear Bryant was the coach. I lived in Alabama. They won the national championship in 1961. They won the national championship in 1964, won it again in 65, should have won it in 66, and I loved it. And then we moved to Tennessee when I was, I think in 1967, and you know, I'm like any Tennessee fan. If you grow up a Tennessee fan and you move to Alabama, you don't become an Alabama fan. So I was an Alabama fan growing up, and we moved to Tennessee, and I continue to be an Alabama fan. I like Tennessee. I hope they do well. I like Coach Pruitt. I think they're going to do really well over the next few years, but I grew up an Alabama fan, and that's the reason I did become one.
Right, that was early in your teenage years, when you're pretty impressionable years growing up, you know, certainly fell in love with the Crimson Tide. And have you ever met Nick Saban?
Yes, we had a kid in Henry County, Marcellus Teague, who ended up going to Tennessee, but Nick Saban came up to Henry County High School, as well as Lane Kiffin, Coach Orgeron, who was at Tennessee at the time, came, and pretty much everybody came, but Marcellus ended up going to Tennessee, but I did meet Nick Saban at Henry County High School.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about your family. I know you have a son. I can remember he played for you at Oak Ridge in your first stint.
Yes, my wife Donna's an English teacher in Roane County at Cherokee Middle School. Got Joe, who played at Oak Ridge High School. Carrie, who cheered at Oak Ridge High School. Samuel and Jacob, who actually played at Pascagoula and then played at Austin High School in Decatur.
So you have four children?
Yes.
So did you coach your son, I guess, at Pascagoula, correct?
Coach Joe in Oak Ridge, and Coach Jacob and Samuel in Pascagoula, and also at Austin High School in Decatur.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's outstanding right there. Didn't realize that. I remember your son Joe playing. Was he on that state championship team?
No, he played in 94, 95, 96.
Okay, we're going to take our second break. You're watching the Locker Room Chat, and our guest is Joe Gaddis, head football coach of the Oak Ridge Wildcats. We'll be right back.
Live and Let Live Drugstore in downtown Rockwood is the premier pharmacy service location. Let our professional staff help with all your pharmacy needs, answer your questions, or help with your medication management with our Medicine on Time packaging system. We also offer medication therapy management to ensure you're receiving maximum benefits from your medication. Diabetes care is available with one-on-one consultations, or you can attend one of our monthly diabetes information classes. Live and Let Live Drugstore in downtown Rockwood.
Tennessee Barns & Buildings in Jacksboro has all your storage building needs. At Tennessee Barns & Buildings, you can pick out your building, then custom design it how you want it, and then have it delivered. Our friendly staff will help you with all your design needs. Are you worried about financing? Well, at Tennessee Barns & Buildings, there's no credit check, so no one is turned down. Plus, you can rent to own your own building. Tennessee Barns & Buildings in Jacksboro says come on down for your next building. Or call 423-449-8139.
We treat you like family at RMG. Bring your junk, cars, aluminum cans. We buy it on the spot and we'll pay you a lot. We treat you like family at RMG. Yeah, we treat you like family at RMG. We treat you like family.
Rome Metals is located just off of Highway 27 between Harriman and Rockwood.
At Earl F. Subaru, providing exceptional customer service is what we do best, and we've got the awards to prove it.
We've been recognized as Tennessee's only 9-time winner of the Love Promise Customer Commitment Award. And again this year, we also earned the Love Promise Community Commitment Award given for enhancing the areas we serve. At Earl F. Subaru, we're more than just a car lot. We're a retailer you can love and one that gives back to local causes. Check out our reviews and come to Earl F. Subaru in Harriman.
All Outback, Forester, Ascent, Legacy, and Impreza models have available 0% financing during the Subaru A Lot to Love event at Earl Duff Subaru.
Muncie Pharmacy is your locally owned hometown pharmacy. They accept most insurances, so why go to the large chain pharmacies when you get better customer service at Muncie Pharmacy? Have a special prescription that needs compounding? Muncie Pharmacy can handle those needs as well. Muncie Pharmacy has a drive-through for your convenience and offers free delivery in the Oak Ridge area. And don't forget the gifts that we have available for all occasions.
Here at Muncie Pharmacy, we take the time to know you and treat you like family.
At OEB, we're committed to keeping you and your family safe. With the outbreak of the coronavirus, we understand you might be afraid to leave your house to get legal help. Now you don't have to. We can handle almost every aspect of your case electronically. Call 546-1111.
Welcome back to the Locker Room Chat. And our guest tonight is Joe Gaddis, head football coach of the Oak Ridge Wildcats. And a little bit of news here. Tennessee basketball got a big announcement here earlier in the week. Eves Pons electing to stay at the University of Tennessee, took his name out of the draft, so that's big news for the Vols. That really, I think that'll just take them and put them to the next level, especially with the recruits they've got coming in this year. Joe, do you like basketball?
You know, I don't watch much college basketball, but I'll tell you this. 2 years ago when Tennessee had such a good team and they had I really enjoy it. I watched more college basketball that year watching them than I can remember watching in the last 10 years. They were a fun team to watch. I loved their coach, and I really loved that team like all Tennessee fans I'm sure did.
Right, that was an outstanding team. And
Coach Barnes has done a great job since he's been there.
Oh, exactly. And he's really a good coach, and he gets the most out of his players, and he demands a lot too. And he don't play around. You know, if you don't do what he says, you'll be over there sitting next to him.
Right.
And, but this team coming up for the Vols, they got a chance maybe to be as good as that team. They got probably more talented team maybe with those freshmen coming in, but we'll see how that plays out. But let's go ahead and go on back to you a little bit and talk about your Wildcats this year. What's the outlook for the Wildcats? I know last year's team went 6-6. You made it to the second round of the playoffs, and but you return a lot of those guys, and you have an experienced offense.
We struggled offensively last year, especially coming out of the gate. I'm going to say it was Game 7, honestly, before we really played very well on offense. If you go back and look at us, our defense was solid as usual. Offensively, we struggled until probably the Mount Juliet game, and then the Mount Juliet game, Powell game were two good offensive games for us. We played pretty good offense the rest of the way out. But this year we have about 7 or 8 starters returning on offense. We expect to be much better early than we were a year ago. We better be. We have to be. Defensively, we have maybe 5 or 6 starters returning. I think we have a chance to be a pretty good football team. I just hope we get to play. I hope our season happens and everybody stays healthy, not just here on our team, but everybody that we play and everybody across the state. Hopefully things will start to die down and we'll get a football season in.
Mm-hmm. I know you returned your quarterback, Mitchell Gibbons. He started last year, and you also have a talented running back, Kendall Jackson. He's been offered a scholarship at the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, Mitchell Gibbons started 12 games last year and actually started a couple of games as a sophomore, so he started 13 or 14 games now, and that's a huge advantage to have going into the season, quarterback with that type of experience. Kendall Jackson, as you said, he really came on strong the last half of the season last year, and he's just he doesn't even resemble the guy he was a year ago. He's much bigger, much stronger, and I think that's going to make him much better. He was mighty good last year, especially, like I said, late in the year. We've got a good receiving core. We probably have more receivers that can play than I can remember us having. We probably have 6, 7 guys who are going to see some significant playing time at the wide receiver position. When I say wide receiver, I'm talking slots too, inside and outside receivers. Offensive line is probably as big and as experienced as we're going to have, as we have had in recent years, and probably as we're going to have in the coming years. Defensively, we don't have quite as many starters back, but I feel like we're going to have to replace Jacob Adams. That's going to be huge. He's an all-state linebacker for us, who seemed like he made every tackle on every play almost for the last 3 years. He obviously didn't, but he was always around the ball and played with a fury. We've got some experience back in the secondary, some experience up front, guys like Jackson Adams at defensive end, Cole Adams. We've kind of moved him around a little. Right now he's at safety. He was at strong safety. Now we moved him back. We've got Brian Kelly back. He was at safety. We've got him up at linebacker. But we've got some other guys in the secondary that played a little bit last year that have some experience. Kicking game's going to be huge. Kicking game was down a little bit last year by our standards, and hopefully will be improved dramatically there. But I think we're going to have a good football team. We better, because our region is tough. Powell's going to be real good. West is going to be real good. Fulton is going to be real good. Much improved over a year ago. Campbell County, they're not the Campbell County of 20 years ago. They're a good football team. Carnes is always talented, scary to look at. They just haven't quite put it together yet. Clinton has a new coach and a new, attitude. So it's going to be a tough region.
Right, I like to call it the Big Four, with you all and Powell, West, and Fulton, and not necessarily in that order, but that's a pretty tough region. I know Fulton was down a little bit last year, but Powell and West were in the top 10 or maybe top 5 most of the year, and Campbell County, as you mentioned, they've really come on, sort of maybe tailed off maybe the last couple of years, but they're always exciting with the Price twins there, and Coach Keith at Clinton. Have you met Coach Keith?
We've talked on the phone 2 or 3 times. Seems like a good guy. Haven't met him, but obviously that's coming up soon.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and I think he's going to turn the Dragon football program around, and just can't wait to see what he can do there at Clinton. Let's go back to Kendall Jackson. Quite the honor, get offered a scholarship at the University of Tennessee, and he's just a junior. You've had some great tailbacks at Oak Ridge, Sean Bohannon, Sean Summers, Sean Williams. Where does Kendall Jackson, how's he fit into that crew right there?
Well, he's probably not as tall as Sean Bohannon, but he's maybe not as fast as Sean Bohannon or Sean Summers. But I tell you what, he's kind of a combination of some of those guys, because he's easily, not that those guys were weak, but he's easily the strongest running back that I've ever coached. When I say strongest, I mean physically. He's the hardest working guy in the weight room of any of those guys. Now Sean Summers was a hard worker, but Sean Summers was probably 5'9", 5'10", 5'8", 5'9", somewhere in there. 160 pounds, 165 pounds. Kendall Jackson is a little over 6 foot, 190, and strong as an ox, and getting stronger every week. He breaks tackles. He can run away from you. He likes to run over you. He's explosive. He's really got all the attributes you would want for a running back to have. That's why Tennessee offered him a scholarship, and that's why a lot more will come his way.
Mm-hmm. Coach Gaddis, as I mentioned earlier, this is your 38th season as the head coach of the Wildcats, and your 46th overall, counting your assistant coaching years. And let's talk a little bit about, what do you remember when you first started coaching, when you first stepped on the field as an assistant coach? Some of your memories.
Probably scared to death. Didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Now you was at
at
Ripley.
I was at Ripley, and I was the secondary coach, and I was the running back coach, and I was honestly, and this is no lie, I was just wild. I was just pretty nuts. I was almost uncontrollable, to be quite honest. I was if you can be too passionate about what you're doing. I remember when I came to Tullahoma with Coach Bland in 1976 or 77, whatever it was, I remember the superintendent literally went to him and said, hey, you got to do something to calm this guy down, give him more responsibility because he's going crazy. And they actually, Coach Bland made me the offensive coordinator in 1978, I think because the superintendent felt like I had to calm down and give me more to do. So I became the offensive coordinator. And but to answer your question, I'm sure I was terrified. Didn't know. I was just excitable. I was a guy that was fired up all the time, but didn't know much of anything other than what I had done in football. But obviously, 40-something years later, I've learned a little bit along the way.
Obviously, you love football, and you can tell your passion. I've seen you over the years, and you haven't changed much, and I like that in a coach. You're excitable, you show emotion, and I like that. And
yeah, I've never been bashful about showing emotion. Sometimes to my own detriment, but I'm fairly emotional, I guess.
Right, that's a good thing. Wear it on your sleeve. Talk about your first game as a head coach at Tullahoma, as a head coach. Yeah.
Well, we played Franklin County, which was a big rival for us, and we hadn't beaten them in several years, and we did win that game. And I'll tell you, something happened in that game that you don't see happen very often. The opening kickoff, we kicked off to Franklin County. They ran it back 95 yards for a touchdown, and I thought, oh, great. Well, they kicked off to us. A young man by the name of Wayne Shaw returned it 90-something yards for a touchdown. So that game, my first game as a head coach, opened up with 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. We went on and won the game in overtime through a screen pass on 4th down and 9 or 10. We'd been knocked back to about seemed like the 20-something yard line, and threw a screen over to the left to our tailback. And the guy's name was Chuck Lawson. I can't believe I remembered his name, but anyway, he scored on a screen pass, and we won the game, and that was my first game as a head coach.
Wow, that's quite a memorable game.
Wild game.
Uh-huh. He had you hooked right there, didn't it?
Absolutely.
If he wasn't already. But I recall a game, you was at Oak Ridge and your first stint there. I think it was Paducah, Kentucky, maybe.
I don't like that game. That's the only game we lost in '91. We lost that game 21-20. Went for 2.
Right.
At the
Okay.
End, lost.
I wasn't sure. I was thinking y'all won that game, but
no.
I remember listening to that game. Or it might have been on TV. Seemed like I was listening, and seemed like it had rained a lot. Was the game played on a
It was strange. It was played on a Saturday, which
yeah.
I to this day don't ever want to play a game on a Saturday, because the only time we've done that, we lost to Paducah Tillman. We had a great team in '91, but I do believe that that game may well have helped us win a state championship, because after that game was over, they exposed some weaknesses that we had personnel-wise, and we made some changes, not necessarily taking guys out of the starting unit, but moving guys around from linebacker to safety and so forth. So that was a pretty good game for us from that perspective. I think the changes we made us better and good enough to beat the great Central team that we beat in the semis, and then beat Gallatin for the championship.
Right. So was that your first game of the season? Was that was an early season game?
No, it was around game 5 or 6. I honestly don't remember what order it was, but it was in the middle.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So y'all went for 2, and they stopped you on it.
Right.
So only loss of the year for the Wildcats. Paducah Tillman, as you mentioned, they were a pretty good team back then, as I recall.
You know, what's interesting is they did not win the state championship in Kentucky that year, but they beat us, and they also beat Brentwood Academy, who was the AA state champion in Tennessee. So they were kind of the state champions of Tennessee, but not of Kentucky, which is really kind of weird, because you think Tennessee high school football generally is better than Kentucky, but they weren't able to win the title there, but they beat 2 state championships in Tennessee that year. We only had 3 classes back then.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know Oak Ridge fans and yourself are starving for another state championship, and What's it going to take for the Wildcats to, it's been 29 years. What's it going to take to get back? Well, it's not been 29 years since you've been back. I think the 2005 team lost a heartbreaker to Ravenwood, I believe. But what's it going to take for the Wildcats to get back to Cookeville?
Well, we've got the ingredients to have a really good team. A lot of it's going to come down to chemistry, how this team meshes together. It's kind of hard to know that now after just literally 2 days in full pads. But this senior group is very good, very talented. They work hard. I think we've got the ingredients to have, like I said earlier, a really good football team. It's just a matter of how this team works together, the chemistry, how they deal with adversity. You have to be able to overcome a lot of adversity to win a state championship. And, all that stuff's going to be told over the next few months.
Mm-hmm. So, Joe, you've been coaching a long time. What's the biggest change you've seen in high school football? If you could just pick one change, something that's changed since you first started coaching, what would that be?
Probably offense. When I was playing high school football and started coaching high school football, it was pretty much 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I mean, everybody ran an I formation. Some people still ran the single wing, but most people ran an I formation. Sometimes it was two tight ends, a power I, or two tight ends, and what you call the old Maryland I, where you got, three backs lined up in a straight line right behind the quarterback. That was pretty much the offensive philosophy. The passing game was almost all play action. Maybe a little three-step drop, but bootleg stuff. Offenses have gone really wide open since then. Now it's rare to see anybody take a snap from under center. It's pretty much all shotgun. So as offenses changed, defenses had to change to try to account for the offense. And, so a lot of it has changed on both sides of the football. But I think offensive football is the biggest change.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. And phone lines are open. If you've got a question or a comment for Coach Gaddis, we got about 6 or 7 minutes left in the show, and got a few other things I'd like to ask you. Hit on them a little bit. Can you give me some of your top coaching moments at any of the schools you've coached at? What stands out?
I think two things stand out. One, the top coaching moment is easy, and any Oak Ridge fan that's been alive since 1991, unless you were an infant, is going to have the same moment I've got, and that's the semifinal game at Central High School in 1991. We won 42-41 in overtime, which sent us to the state championship game to this day, and I can't imagine ever seeing a better game. That's the best high school football game I've ever seen, been a part of, and really the best football game I've ever seen. Central, everybody called that the state championship game, and obviously it wasn't, but in a way it was, because those were easily the best two teams in the state of Tennessee. Great game. Just an unbelievable crowd, atmosphere, just incredible. So that would be number one easily. Number two, and I don't have time to really get into this whole story, but I'll just put it this way. We're down, I'm in Henry County in 2007, I believe. We're down 26-20 to Melrose with about a minute left in the game. They're literally running the clock out, and we call our last time out, we call a safety blitz. Our safety was a guy named Shante Sims. He happens to hit the A-gap right beside the quarterback as the ball's being snapped. Quarterback sees him, kind of unnerves him a little, fumbles the ball. Our guy catches it in the air, running full speed in the A-gap, runs 45 yards for a touchdown. We kick the extra point, win 27-26 in a game that they're running the clock out. It's over. So, our fans are gone. We have a few people left in the stands, and all of a sudden we win, and we go to the semis the next week in a game that we had pretty much lost, except for the guys that were on the field and on the sideline. So that would be probably the second most unbelievable moment in my career.
Yeah, it's you never give up, right?
No, not since that play for sure.
sort of like Tennessee and Arkansas in '98.
I remember that well. I was at that game.
Right, and I was at that game too, and my head was buried in my hands, and I heard a big roar and looked up, and the ball was laying there.
Yep.
And Billy Ratliff jumped on the ball, so you never know, you never give up, you play to the final horn. So that's a great story there. Joe also coached a lot of great players. Who's some of the best players you've coached or coached against?
Well, Sean Summers, obviously one of the great ones. T. Higgins, obviously one of the great ones. You mentioned Sean Bohannon and Sean Williams earlier. Johnny Williams was a great one. Guys that we coached against, it's hard not to mention Todd Helton. He was a great football player, great quarterback. Everybody knows him more as a baseball player, but he obviously was a great football player as well, and went on to Tennessee and played a little football, not much, before I think he got hurt. Jerry Colquitt got hurt, and then Peyton Manning started playing, I think, as a result of those injuries. But those would be my top guys that probably I've coached, and Todd, certainly a great one that we coached against.
Right, I know it's hard to remember a lot of those players, but you don't want to leave anybody out. But I had a list up here I was looking at. Mike Blackerby did a great interview with you on 5-Star Prep, so I want to give him props. Sort of asking you some of the questions that he asked you. That was just a great interview, and I wanted to ask you some of these same questions. But also another player, Antonio London, who you coached at Tullahoma.
Yes, Antonio London was the number 1 or 2 prospect in Tennessee in 1988, I believe. I actually left Tullahoma when he was a junior, after his junior year, but he and I remained close, and he went on to Alabama. But he was a great football player that I coached for sure. I remember Rodney Helton was a great player at Central High School that we coached against when I was at Tullahoma. He went on to Alabama as well. A lot of great players that I've coached that I didn't mention, and certainly a lot of great ones that we coached against.
Todd Collins, another one there at Jefferson
Todd
County.
Collins at Jefferson County in '87. When we were at my last game at Tullahoma, we played Jefferson County in the semifinals, and Todd Collins was on that team. Just an unbelievable football player.
A lot of people talk about Scotty Witt at Clinton.
Yeah, Scotty Witt. Witt, he was known for a lot of things, but he played safety back there. He played in '92, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
sir.
he in that game we played. If Witt hadn't been at safety, we win that game, because Sean Williams and other guys would break out into the secondary, and Witt would just tackle them, and where other safeties couldn't do that or wouldn't have done that. Scotty Witt saved that game for Clinton for sure, with tackle after tackle after tackle. I know offense is something I'm sure he's remembered for, but he was a force at safety against us in that game.
Right. We got about a minute left in the show, and Joe, I just want to ask you, how longer do you have a timetable? How much longer you intend to coach?
No, I don't. I don't know. I love coaching. I don't have any plans to not coach, so I don't have any kind of plan like that at all. Now, who knows what'll happen, but as long as I'm healthy and can do this, I love doing it.
That's good to hear, and hope you're around for a long time, and I wish your team the best of luck this season, and thank you for being on the Locker Room Chat tonight.
Thanks, I enjoyed it.
Well, you've been watching the Locker Room Chat. Our guest, Joe Gaddis, and we'll be back next week. We got football coming up in about 2 weeks, and we'll try to look at some of the area teams, to preview them. So thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next week on the Locker Room Chat.